Welcome to the Builders of Authority podcast, a show committed to helping you build authority for your brand. In the realm of business and personal branding, authority stands as a cornerstone. Authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time. So join us as we build something remarkable together. And now, here's your host, Adam McChesney.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Builders Authority podcast. Our title sponsor for the show is Go High Level, also known as GHL. GHL is the first ever all-in-one platform that gives you the tools, support, and resources you need to succeed and crush your marketing goals. Personally, I've used this software since 2020. It's been a game changer for my business and our clients. If you are looking to level up your CRM and marketing game, then this is the platform to use. You can find a link for a free and extended 30-day trial with tons of Builders of Authority bonuses in the show notes. So take advantage of the opportunity to adopt the amazing software and grow your business. Today, I'm joined by someone I got the opportunity to share the stage with back in November at the Thing in Orlando. And let's just say I'm really glad I went before her because she is absolutely a phenomenal speaker who brings the energy. It would have been tough to have followed her up. So I went before, luckily. Thanks, Terry, for doing it that way. But I'm excited to interview her today and learn a little bit more about her and what she does. My guest today is Angie Callen. She is the founder of Career Benders. Angie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for setting the bar so high, too.
Got a lot to live up to.
That's all right. I appreciate being on a show with a podcast host who talks as fast as me when I host my podcast. So We're going to give everybody a whole lot of information today.
Well, you got to get through the first part because the first part's like the stuff you have to do. And then now's where we get to really dive into stuff.
We get to have fun.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about who Angie is, kind of how you got started in your entrepreneurial journey and where you're at today.
Yeah, to kind of give context to the entrepreneurial journey, I'll rewind tiny, like one page of a Reader's Digest. I started my career as an engineer, and I spent 7 years in civil engineering. And in case in 30 seconds you have not realized I don't have an engineering personality, I'll just give you the TLDR on that one. And so I went through a pretty major career change, spent about a year fumbling around trying to figure out, which end was up, what the heck I was doing, stumbled into the nonprofit sector where I spent another 7 years, 4.5 of which I was the executive director of a grassroots organization that had a ton of growth potential. And that really sparked my interest and brought my entrepreneurial spirit alive. And that was not anything I had ever, I think I'd been in tune with it, but never had been able to really articulate or had the knowing that that's what it was. And so that really set the stage to, go into some sort of business ownership very practically. I knew I wanted to have a low startup, low overhead business, and I've always had the propensity to coach, consult, and train. And I came across the career specialty of life coaching, which was really emerging 7 years ago. And I was it kind of smacked me in the face. And I was like, yep, there it is. I can do that. I have a perspective. I've gone through big career changes. I can do this. And so I just leapt in with both feet, and Career Benders was born. And it's been a pretty amazing 7-year ride so far.
That's awesome. What has been like the biggest epiphany, if you will, of like, hey, I made the right decision? And then also, like, what has been the biggest hurdle you've had to overcome?
I think I'll start with hurdle, because I think most of us would answer us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A successful entrepreneurship, successful or not, is an 80% mindset. And, we are always facing imposter syndrome. You're always facing the entrepreneurial mind bleep. Don't know if we can say the 4-letter word on this show,
you're good.
Which is the hardcore ups and downs and those extremes of like, oh my gosh, I signed 3 clients. Look at how much money's coming in. Holy crap, I haven't had a sales call in 3 weeks. What the hell am I doing? To back up riding high and figuring out from a mental perspective how to have that faith and trust, to give a throwback to good old Think and Grow Rich, in how to have the commitment and the knowing that you are on the right track and that like the financial ups and downs will even out. That took a lot of work and takes a kind of a lot of mental willpower. And I'll say even 7 years in business and lots of zeros. And I would say you would probably say the same thing, Adam, that you still face it. At this point, in case you didn't pick up on the trend, I have a 7-year itch when it comes to my career, and I am at it because as of the day Adam and I are recording this, I celebrated my business's 7-year birthday yesterday. And so now I'm at this point of like reinvention, making sure I'm keeping myself engaged in my business. But the beauty of a business is that I get to create that for myself without having to go find a new career or rediscover something about myself. And that's what I'm excited about, and is almost the new hurdle I'm facing.
Yeah. Well, I think what you said right there is something that not a lot of people commit to doing, if you will. So, like for example, I have been in digital marketing since 2018, so just came up on 6 years, 4 years plus of that full time. And you see all these people that they just want to be an entrepreneur, and they hop from thing to thing to thing. Now, I've done some different things. I've done it on my own as a partner, and then now doing it back on my own again. I tell people all the time, like, I've pivoted a couple different times, but the thing hasn't really changed. How I've done it, how I've provided the services and things like that. But I'm committed to the game, and especially with like AI and technology in my space, I don't know what the future is going to hold. But like, if I continue to stay on the path, it's likely going to be, I at least know that I'm going to be in it for the long haul. Right. And so I think so often people hop from thing to thing to thing, which I'm interested to get your kind of take on it from the career side. Is a lot of times in today's day and age, it's what's the next best thing? I did not making enough money here. I'm not doing the thing I wanted to do. I'm just going to go find, where the grass is greener.
Well, and you bring up a good point that actually takes us back to the previous question, which I realize I answered half of. I answered the hurdles. I didn't answer kind of, let's say, the fun, the realization kind of part, which ties totally into what you just said. And that is that one of the beautiful things about entrepreneurship is your ability to not only leverage kind of your gifts and purpose, but find it. And I think that that's what you just kind of pointed out, Adam, in saying that it's looked a few different ways, and you kind of have to find the mechanism or the delivery system with which those purpose and gifts best serve others. But there's been a common theme in all those things that you have done. And I think that comes into play as well, even just in a bigger picture of kind of career development, is most people in this world, and this is something I realized a long time ago, most people in this world stay small. And that's a choice. We stay small. We accept mediocrity as just a social norm that we're supposed to buy into. And I think that that was a seed that was planted for me when a life component comes into play here. I made a really big move from the East Coast to Colorado 16 years ago. And it's amazing how sense of place can really impact your life. But for me, it really was a big part of that finding and that discovery and the freedom to find purpose and really kind of step into it. And when I made that move, people kept telling me like, oh, you're living my dream. You're moving to the mountains. You're going to be able to ski every day. And I just kept thinking, well, you can do this too. Yeah. I'm no one special. And I think when it comes back to whether it's a business, whether it's career planning, whether it's a job search, we have more choice and more agency than we typically exercise or typically think we have to exercise. And if you can really harness that power, you've got a lot more potential in your career and a lot more fulfillment coming your way.
So let's dive into that for a second, because I've struggled with this up until really the last couple of months, where, a lot of times people will go into entrepreneurship and you're like, I get to work for myself. And then we realize that we just create a job for ourselves, right? And so then we're like, oh my gosh, I did this for the freedom, typically not having to work for somebody else, the money, whatever it might be. And then we find ourselves in this rat race of, oh my gosh, I'm down this rabbit hole years down the line and I have no freedom. Talk to us about what you've kind of dealt with in regards to that. Yeah.
It's 100% true, and it's tricky. It's a tricky conversation because I think that there can be a misconception, and I'm going to speak in generalities here. I think there can be a misconception that entrepreneurship is the easier path.
Yeah.
And it isn't. It's different. I tell clients all the time when they're sitting here thinking, do I start my own thing or do I find a job? I'm like, neither one is better or worse than the other. They're different. And I find you tend to be wired one way or the other.
Yeah.
And when it comes to entrepreneurship, you have to be really careful of not falling into the thanks Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week trap from day one, because you have to put in passive income isn't actually passive. You had to put in some sort of action in order to realize the passivity of something that took time, energy, knowledge, and, ideation to create and scale to the point of passive. And that's where you have to go into this with realistic expectations of what you have to put in order to then get out. Now, that said, you can go overboard, and I went overboard because I am kind of an intense person. At least I am a laughing, intense person. So it diffuses it a little bit. But when I set a goal for myself, I'll kill myself to get there.
Yeah.
And I had a year or two in my business. I've evolved. So I haven't maybe pivoted as much as it sounds like you have, but I've evolved. But it has that same kind of theme of like there's still a thread. But there were a few years when I was really in build mode, and the pandemic converged and brought career coaching into the forefront. That I had a growing business that I was already thinking, I'm getting kind of busy, and it went boom overnight. And I found myself working 70, 80 hours a week. I was coaching 40 hours a week. I am a super high energy type A extrovert. Even I cannot spend 40 hours a week talking to people on Zoom.
Yeah.
It was way, way, way too much. And then to unwind that took a year or two of continually like stepping it down so that you're not taking some financial hit. I can't burn the house down.
Yeah.
In order to kind of like undo it. And so you have to be cautious of kind of going too far all in on build, but also going in with the expectations that you're going to have to put your energy in to build too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's got to be the I'm not going to say like the 50-50 mix, but there's got to be some sort of dedication to like actually having something more than just what is Angie doing from a day-to-day standpoint, because it's not only is it not scalable, but if you want to turn it off, as you mentioned, or scale it back, it takes a direct impact hit to your income. And then you got to go figure out the next thing. And that's the thing I think a lot of people, like I was looking back as I've been rebuilding this stuff, and people ask me all the time, like, Adam, well, how has it been different this time than when you started? I said, well, the difference is I have now a track record. I have a brand. So when I announced my agency this time 6 months ago, we had 20 leads come in the first day, and we're getting 3 to 5 leads a day. Now, I was struggling to get leads for the first year when it happened the first time. So I didn't start over from zero. I started over from experience and the brand, which is why I teach, obviously, what I do as well. But in that, we're growing at a pretty rapid race, and you almost go back to those days where you were a little bit less busy and you could work on some of those things, and you're like, wow, I wish for the moment I have right now, but now I'm
Careful
wishing
what you
I
wish
could go
for.
back there. Yeah, exactly. It'll come
But
true.
it's a good point that to bring in the name of your show and business, you don't build authority overnight. And even though this endeavor picked up more quickly, it was a foundation that you built in previous endeavors, learning experience from failed, or let's just call them learning experiences that you brought that can help create a stronger foundation for faster movement. And it's funny you bring that up. I just launched a new brand as well, and it's a sister brand. So Career Benders, which has been known for boutique one-on-one high-level career coaching for 7 years, is not going anywhere. But now it has a sister brand that's focused on training the trainer, coaching. And it's the same thing of like, you have that reputation that helps you kind of release those things. But in the early days, when you're a solopreneur and you have to kind of wear all those hats at once, you really have to make sure you don't overdo it, but also don't have those ridiculous expectations that you alone are going to be an overnight success. We've all heard those quotes, right? It took me 10 years to be an overnight success, or whatever it is. So.
Yes, exactly. So let's shift the conversation here a little bit. How have you built your brand, and what are some things that you do to get more of your ideal clients?
Yeah. And, I think I can answer that question so much better now because I have the hindsight to know the one thing I didn't realize I was doing. And Adam, this isn't going to surprise you because you heard what I talked about at the thing. My favorite word is authenticity.
Yeah.
And what I realized I was doing was just being me.
Yeah.
And I didn't, when I started my business, I didn't, and I don't know that I would recommend the following, everybody. However, I didn't go out and do a competitor analysis. I didn't go out and say, hey, who's doing what and how are they doing it? And sometimes I recommend people do that now when I help them start businesses, because it can help you confirm that there's a market and get inspiration. I didn't do any of that. I just thought, okay, I got a perspective. I'm going to just throw this out there and see what happens. And so I built my business and related to people and even coached people in the only way I knew how. And it ended up becoming so intimately me that people can't help but engage. And that feels a very egotistical thing to say, but I'm not saying it's because it was Angie. It was because I, as a business builder and as a service professional in a relational type business, didn't know how to do this without just relating to people the way I naturally do. And that ended up being the number one marketing strategy I ever could have deployed in my business without knowing it.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times too, so when I first started really going all in on the lead generation strategy that's paid off time and time again for me right now is the personal branding, but I didn't necessarily know it was personal branding. I just knew it at the time as posting on social media. And when I would start to post more on social media, it then started to take weight and provide value and do all those different things. But so often, right, we don't even realize that we're building a brand or not building a brand. Or if we're building a brand, we don't realize that we're building the brand in the wrong way. And so that's one aspect I would be intrigued to get your thoughts is what are some things that you've learned about building a brand or trying to grow your business that you're like, I maybe shouldn't have done that?
And some of these happened. So even though I unlocked a great little piece of marketing magic without knowing it, I was doing a whole lot of stuff wrong. I didn't pay attention to social media for a long time and kind of let that fall by the wayside. And I know I would have stronger assets there even today if I had. I really took an in-person approach to this. I just went out and networked my ass off because I love people, and I knew that that could help me get a ball rolling.
Yep.
And both waited on the social game, and then once I was in it, didn't have a strategy. Right, posting every day isn't necessarily a strategy. But here's the bigger things I learned is that it took me several months to figure out who I was serving and what I was giving them. And so it kind of comes back, and it's going to sound super, super cliche. I didn't know my niche. And if you don't know your niche, no matter how much posting or authenticity you bring to it, you can't speak to them because you're kind of shouting into the void and trying to be everything to everyone. And we know what happens when you attempt to do that. You become nothing to no one.
Yep.
And so I think that took a little bit to realize, like, okay, I need to focus on a specific group of people so that I can be in the places they are. I can design offerings that align with them, and I can message those offerings in a way that align with pain points. So in other words, it took me a little while to understand what kind of solution I was and who that solution was for. And that definitely cost me several months of runaround.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing too, is in the beginning as well, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know who my ideal client is. I just need to pay the bills and I need customers. So you're like, I'll take anybody and everybody. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I shouldn't have taken that person. I shouldn't have taken the person. I should have charged this person a lot more. And then all of a sudden, like, it can be very frustrating because you then just go do it. But I have found is that the quicker that you cut that off and you set the new standard or the new line in the sand is the quicker you're going to get to that next base camp. I have this time around, other than the exception of like one or two people that we've taken on where we're like, we should have charged more. This time it's not like, oh my gosh, this person's calling. I just don't want to answer the phone.
Yep.
And that's where I think a lot of people get it wrong too, is not everybody is your client and it's okay to say no. So how have you tried to like reset that standard or set the standard, and how powerful has been saying no to the wrong opportunities and to the wrong clients?
It is the scariest thing you'll ever do. I'm going to tell you right now. The first time you say no to someone who's willing to give you money, they will want to give you their money more. Just going to throw that one out there. Yeah. People don't really like being rejected, even if you do it in the most loving, kind way possible. Yeah. And I had a very similar experience, Adam, where, it was like, I can coach anyone and everyone. And on some level, that's true. You can, doesn't mean you should. And so what happens is you end up with a lineup of energy vampires. And my energy vampires are different than Adam's energy vampires are different than your energy vampires, but you have to know what they are. Now, to some extent, we don't know until we have one. And then you're like, oh, but then you have to commit to saying, this is not my person. And it will actually cost me if I say yes. because in order to say yes to the things you want, you have to say no to the things you don't want.
Yeah.
And when you say yes to a not ideal client or an energy vampire, you are taking space in your roster for the ideal client that's going to call you in 2 days.
Yes, that is exactly it. Yeah, I mean, so much of what you're kind of saying and exuding is like stuff I've felt in my core at one moment or another. I think a lot of people struggle with that, but I also think a lot of people don't actually make a line in the sand and then go move it differently. They live in this moment of desperation, always back against the wall when it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah. A scarcity mindset does not serve an entrepreneur. And what I'll tell you is this is going to sound really, really counter. I refer out more business than I keep. And I have people who thank me profusely when I tell them, no, I'm not your person. Go work with this other person. It builds your reputation and your brand credibility by saying, I want you to work with the person who is the best fit for you. And so it has actually benefited me, improved my ROI, improved my brand reputation, and also improved my life as the service provider to say, you are my human, you are not my human. However, I don't just say you're not my human. I say, you're not my human, here's who is. Yeah. And so there is a way to say no that will kind of protect, if not become a benefit to your business. So you also have to bring that into the equation as well, because if you're just like, no, get out of here, of course your stomach's going to be tied in knots every time you say no, because it's not feeling good how you're doing it. So it's something you need to feel confident doing, find the resources so that the answer isn't no, it's not me.
Yep. And I think that's where a lot of people don't take that advantage as well, or they say it in the wrong way. But I mean, I also think as well as when you have abundance, when you don't have that scarcity mindset, you get better at navigating that situation. So like right now, because of where we're at and what I've already learned with more experience doing this time, I actually don't mind telling that person, hey, I wouldn't be a good fit for you, but as you mentioned, here's somebody else that might be that way. But when you don't have that experience and when you don't have the book of business that you're looking for, I don't think you have the confidence to like truly say it, because you're like, man, I kind of actually need that. And so you have to build up the abundance mindset, but you also have to build up the confidence that when you say no to that wrong client, you're just opening up yourself for the right opportunity, the right client coming down the line.
No, let's be real. When you are earlier in business and don't have cash flow, you're not really in a scarcity versus abundance mindset. You're in a practicality mindset. And so saying no may not be realistic. What I'll challenge you to do is if you know you're taking on a client that is not ideal, draw the line at energy vampires. But if you're taking on a client that you're like, this is really not my, my ICP, my ideal client profile, I'm going to say yes to this one because I know I need this from a financial, stability standpoint. However, I'm going to do a 1-for-1. My next client, if who walks in the door is not ideal, that one I'm going to pass on so that I can make sure I'm at least making space for some of the ideals, because then you can start trading out. Once you finish a scope with a not ideal, you can replace that with an ideal. But if all you do is have not ideal because you say yes to all of them because you need the money, you're never going to be in that situation of transition. And so that's a way to kind of maybe ease into it or transition if you're finding yourself in this space right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously you have your own podcast. I met you at a speaking event, going to events and all that stuff. What has building your brand with the podcast, being a guest on podcast, speaking on stage, how has that also grown your company?
Oh, well, how most people are afraid of death and afraid of public speaking.
Yeah.
I don't think about death because I know exactly where I'm going, and I freaking love getting on a stage and opining. However, don't ever ask me to pretend or do improv, because if we go back to the fact that my favorite word is authenticity, I just love being on a stage and talking talking about what I know about.
Yeah.
And I'm going to actually answer the podcast question first, because it's funny. I just interviewed our friend Sebastian Rusk the other day. And so he and I were really talking about the whole podcast game. My podcast is called No More Mondays. And the whole idea is to help you ditch the Sunday blues, right? Stop losing a whole weekend day because you're dreading Mondays. improve your career station. And, I started out with the idea of wanting to bring career stories to people so that they could be inspired to know that there are people out there not living the mediocre life. But what I ended up finding was that podcasting specifically opened up a community of people to me that I would have never been able to engage with or keep in my circle without the ask of, hey, why don't you be on my podcast and have this conversation? And it's been one of those incredible things for my career development, my personal development. I have friends from, podcast interviews, and obviously a brand and credibility builder, because I have guests who have referred me tens of thousands of dollars in business. I have podcast guests and the visibility of podcasts that have linked to like in real stages and events and things like that. So if you're not a public speaker, you don't necessarily have to be. However, you can only impact so many people if you keep yourself quiet.
Yeah.
And so from a brand building perspective, being loud has benefited me.
Well, I think what you basically said is it allows, especially for somebody that is authentic like yourself, it allows for you to do that in a one-to-many fashion and continue to double down and build on the relationships that you have, so more people can know who Angie is before they actually meet or need Angie. And that's the thing where, like, I had somebody literally reach out last night, husband and wife, tree service company, and they're like, Adam, we heard you on a podcast and we want to schedule a call with you. And I'm like, oh, awesome. What podcast was it? It was a podcast from 2021. So we're on literally almost 4 years. And so, like, you never know who's going to hear it when they need to hear it.
And they're going to hear it.
And then they're going to hear it, and it's like all going to click. And I'm like, I don't even remember what I talked about in 2021, much less what I talked about yesterday. But
what business
that's awesome.
Did I have then?
Yeah, exactly. But so I think that's the power.
The credibility factor is huge. It helps with the know, like, trust.
Mm-hmm.
Because if people can listen to you, hear you, if you're on a video podcast and they can see you, there's a level of, I already kind of know her and I buy into her. So now the sales call becomes, a super easy conversion of more, how are we going to work together? Not if are we going to work together, because essentially you've been able to funnel them down the marketing funnel into decision-making instead of consideration, simply because you put yourself out there in a way that they could get to know you better, which I think is really fabulous. There's another piece I'll add to this that you said something that made me discover. It also really helped me find my voice and perspective insofar as what people are resonating with. And so it can also be a really powerful tool for your own discovery, especially the speaking thing. And I'll give you a really specific example of last summer, I was invited to be a speaker at a marketing conference, and I was asked to come and speak on leadership. And I'm like, oh yeah, heck yeah, that's my jam. But it's not anything I've ever gotten on a stage and done. It's not anything I necessarily would consider my brand, even though there's an undercurrent there. And I got on that stage and unlocked a giant can of worms in the best way, because it was like, holy crap, this is what I'm supposed to be talking about.
Yep.
And these are the people I'm supposed to be supporting. And so it was a huge realization that would have taken either much longer to come or never had come had I not been asked to say, hey, come talk about this thing.
Yep. Well, and I think finding your voice is, somebody messaged me last night, Adam, like, hey, I'm so uncomfortable getting on camera. How do you do it all of the time? And my response back to them was, I've been doing it for so long. What now scares me, if you will, or gets me uncomfortable, is just the amount of stuff that I have to do and the quality of it, right? The quality of how I'm being a podcast host, or going to be a guest on your podcast soon, or how I'm doing it. There's levels to all of this stuff, and we get better at managing it, but it's not like it goes away. You still get those things. And so, but I told him, like, dude, you just literally need to get started. You're freaking yourself out about stuff that you haven't ever done. You have to get started to find your voice and to eventually get to a point where you're getting good at it.
Yeah, don't put yourself through that pain twice. Yeah. Also, just as much as scarcity does not serve entrepreneurs, perfection is a disservice even more. Because it's funny because so many entrepreneurs have that high performing mentality that perfection tends to hitch a ride with, that it's very common to want to do something perfect, but A, there is no such thing. Yeah. And B, you're not even going to know if there was such a thing, you won't know it until you put it out there and get feedback. And that's the case whether you want to start a podcast, whether you want to launch a new program, or whether you want to start a whole business. You have to get to the point of 80% is kind of good enough, because I need feedback. I need to see what the reception of this is to fill in the other 20%.
Yeah.
Out there is better than perfect.
Love it. Angie, this has been incredible. What services, I know you mentioned the one-to-one coaching and some of the other stuff you added with the sister company, but just do a brief outline real quick as we wrap up the episode of all the different services that you offer.
There's pretty much 3 pillars. So we still offer one-on-one boutique career coaching for all levels of professionals. And I have a network of very trusted, highly vetted people who support me in that if I am not the person who is going to serve it. The second pillar is supporting those service providers. And so training, professional development, and community for primarily other coaches, consultants, or let's say knowledge-based professionals. And then the third pillar is helping high performers really meet that next level. So executive coaching, leadership coaching, and team building, which kind of also encompasses the speaking stuff. So that's where I go into a boardroom and I'm full on me. I got to do it in France last month and it was super fun.
Oh, that is so cool. Yeah. It's been awesome since we connected, just following everything that you have going on. And I'm looking forward to being a guest on your podcast soon and just continuing to support Angie's journey and everything that you do. So thank you so much for coming on. Where can people stay connected with you? We'll put all that stuff in the show notes.
Yeah. LinkedIn is my go-to. That's where I spout off daily, and you can follow all of my antics about how you can have a thriving career, business, and an amazing life, and I show it. And then we're on all the socials at Career Benders. And then you can also find me at careerbenders.com and our new sister brand, themoderncoach.co.
Love it. Well, Angie, thank you so much for coming on. This was an incredible episode and excited to get some feedback on this. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me, Adam.
Thank you again to our title sponsor, Go High Level. Without them, we aren't able to produce the quality of content or have amazing guests on like we did today with Angie. Check out a free and extended 30-day trial in the show notes. Make sure as well to leave us a 5-star review, making a big push for review, and it helps us move the needle. It helps more people like yourself get access to this incredible information. And remember, authority isn't built overnight. It's built over time.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. We sure do appreciate it. Until next time, friends.